Any ministerial notices of motion? Are there any ministerial statements? I call the Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, cost of living pressures are hitting the people of this state hard. There's the cost of fuel that impacts on the cost of food and the cost of groceries. For people on low and fixed incomes, it is especially hard, forcing them to make difficult choices. In many cases, it means going without. But, Mr Speaker, today I have good news for Queensland. We are going to provide Queenslanders with a $175 cost of living rebate. The $175 rebate will be provided on electricity bills and is only possible because the electricity assets of Queensland are owned by the people of Queensland. The combined value of this rebate is $385 million. Mr Speaker, this is not the first dividend Queenslanders have earned from their power assets. Over the past 4 years, Queenslanders have been paid $575 because they kept their electricity networks in their own hands. This brings the total amount paid in electricity dividends to $1.185 billion. Mr Speaker, this dividend is not available in states that sold off their electricity assets. Mr Speaker, this dividend offsets strong economic headwinds impacting electricity prices. The war in Ukraine has led to higher gas prices linked to global oil prices. The Callide C4 generator has also been offline for repairs following an explosion. We are also disadvantaged by the former federal government's lack of a national energy policy. But it is only because Queenslanders own these assets that this $175 cost of living rebate is available. Mr Speaker, $175 might not sound like much to some people, but for those facing these hard choices, it is a help. It is further proof that the people of this state made the right choices, the strongest choice that continues to pay dividends.
Order. Order, members. One member has the call. It's the Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Ours is a freedom-loving society. Lives have been sacrificed in wars defending that ideal. We believe in free speech, but accept that with that freedom comes responsibility. No one is free to vilify or spread hate. And, Mr Speaker, my government is moving to make that law. I am proud to announce that the public display of Nazi hate symbols will be banned in Queensland. It will be a criminal offence to display those symbols to promote hatred and cause fear. Religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism will be exempt, as will displays for educational purposes. We do not do this lightly or without good reason. Late last year, police seized a Nazi flag flown near a Brisbane synagogue. Only a few months earlier, a train carriage in the suburbs was graffitied with swastikas and Nazi slogans. The member for Palaszczuk had a swastika painted on his electorate office. The Queensland Jewish Board of Deputies said it showed a rise of anti-Semitism that cannot be ignored. Mr Speaker, our government agrees. Let me make this absolutely plain. Nazism is evil. Evil triumphs.
Member for Kawana.
Mr Speaker, evil triumphs. Evil triumphs when good people do nothing.
That's right.
We will not do nothing and allow this evil to grow. Mr Speaker, I thought those who promoted these hideous ideas were to be pitied. Instead, I say they deserve to be punished. Their crimes are not harmless, nor are their ideologies. They are to be called out, confronted and condemned. I want to thank the Parliamentary Legal Affairs and Safety Committee that has examined this issue, and I table the government's response to its report. The committee has made 17 recommendations. The government accepts all 17. We will consult further with the legal community and others and introduce a bill in the second half of this year. To those who promote these symbols of hate, I say this. Your community condemns you, and your days of spreading ignorance and hate are over. Mr Speaker, every Queenslander has the right to die with dignity. This week marks National Palliative Care Week, a time when we acknowledge the right of all Australians to access high-quality care and where they need it. Mr Speaker, improving access to quality palliative care is a priority for our government. That's why we've committed to reforming Queensland's palliative care system and invested $171 million over 5 years to improve services. Today I can announce that as part of our palliative care reform package, we'll invest $55 million to boost palliative care in regional, rural and remote Queensland. Once again, Mr Speaker, a government for all Queensland. Services will commence from early October, benefiting Queenslanders across 9 hospital and health services, including Cairns and Hinterland, the North West, Townsville, Mackay, the Central West, Central Queensland, Wide Bay, Darling Downs and the South West Hospital and Health Service. Mr Speaker, after a rigorous independent process, I can confirm that Blue Care has won the tender to provide these services. This funding will deliver a holistic palliative care for thousands of Queenslanders in regional and remote areas. It will cover home care, bereavement and support services, telehealth and on-call and 24/7 nursing care. Mr Speaker, this isn't just about healthcare, it's about quality of life. This initiative will ensure that more Queenslanders spend the rest of their lives in comfort, close to families and friends. Mr Speaker, today is National Sorry Day, a time to reflect on the hurt and sufferings of stolen generations and unite to work towards a better future. From the 1800s to the 1970s, it's estimated that between 1 in 3 and 1 in 10 children were separated from their families, including thousands of children here in Queensland. Mr Speaker, the 26th of May is the anniversary of the tabling of the Bringing Them Home report, a report which documented the horrendous suffering of our First Nations people at the hands of government and institutions around Australia. And that's why on this day in particular we acknowledge the wrongs of the past, remember the profound grief, suffering and loss caused by the forcible removal of those children. Mr Speaker, tomorrow also marks the beginning of National Reconciliation Week, which runs from the 27th of May till the 3rd of June. The 2022 theme, Be Brave, Make Change, urges us to tackle the unfinished business of reconciliation. I'm pleased to confirm that our government is doing just that. We've introduced Queensland's Reconciliation Action Plan to deliver social, economic and cultural outcomes for Indigenous people. We've established the Queensland First Children and Families Board. We're the first government to appoint a First Nations housing advisor. We're working with the First Nations people to co-design a whole-of-government and community strategy as part of our response to the first report from the Women's Safety and Justice Task Force. We're establishing the Office of the Chief First Nations Justice Officer. We're establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Chief Health Officer. We enable legal recognition of traditional Torres Strait Islander child-rearing practices. Thank the member for Cook. We're implementing a partnership approach to deliver the National Agreement on Closing the Gap. We introduced the Local Thriving Communities Reform to enable Indigenous communities to make decisions on the future of their people. And we're progressing the path to treaty, one of the highest priorities of our government, which is backed by a $300 million fund to promote reconciliation and healing. Mr Speaker, this House issued a formal apology to stolen generations in 1999. A national apology was made in 2008, but the work of reconciliation is never done. National Sorry Day serves as a reminder to us all that we must continue to acknowledge and reflect on the wrongs of the past. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to confirm that tomorrow, along with Minister Enoch, I'll unveil a new memorial in Anzac Square to honour Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women who served our country. And I'm looking forward to the Queensland Reconciliation Awards next week. Mr Speaker, we'll continue to work with First Nations people around the state to acknowledge the wrongs of the past, bridge the gap and support Indigenous Queenslanders to have a greater say in the future of their state. Mr Speaker, Andrew Symonds was an outstanding player who made an unforgettable contribution to Queensland and Australian cricket. He was an all-rounder of the highest skill whose batting, bowling and fielding entertained so many of fans all over the world. He was a highly valued member of Australia's Test and One-Day teams. And Sheffield Shield followers remember his wonderful performances for Queensland. On behalf of our government, I again offer our deep condolences to Andrew Symonds' family and friends. A public memorial will be held tomorrow in Townsville at Riverway Stadium. The members for Thuringowa and Mundingburra will represent the government. Mr Speaker, the tragedy is that many other families this year are also grieving. More than 120 people have lost their lives on Queensland's roads this year, and I assure the House that they are all in our thoughts. As the Minister for Transport always says, we will not let up on our efforts to curb the road toll. And finally, Mr Speaker, yesterday I was highlighting the contributions of so many to the campaign to curb alcohol-fuelled violence. Of course, one of the greatest contributions was from the member for Cooper. Jonty's father was tragically killed by a single punch. Her campaign highlighting the dangers of single punch led to her being awarded the Young Australian of the Year and I think it's important that this House acknowledges her efforts.